Hello, everyone. My name is Steve Berlack. I am the author of Broadcast Your Inner Champion, and I'm a motivational speaker. But more importantly, today I'm coming to you as a Black man in America. The first thing that I will tell you is that I have lived the irony of teaching U.S. history in Baltimore City Public Schools as a Black man in America. It was one of the first things I made sure that my students understood when they came in the door the very first day. The irony of what it meant that a Black man was teaching them U.S. history. People have been coming to me and they have been asking me, what is so different? What's different about what we're experiencing now, the tragedies of the past, and what we're seeing today? What is so different between the lynching of a Black man in Minneapolis and the lynching of a man trying to vote in Alabama in the 1800s? And I will tell you that there is a difference. And the biggest difference that I see is that finally, people besides people of color, besides the Black men who are being lynched in America day by day, and women, besides them, white people, Asian, yellow, purple, green, brown, it doesn't matter the color, but people all over are finally tired. We're tired of it. We're tired of this country not living up to its promise to all of its citizens. That's the difference. I had a very interesting conversation with my daughter yesterday. Fascinating, because one of the things she said to me was that she was amazed at the fact that all of these things are happening right in the middle of this pandemic. And she said something profound to me. She said she believes that it's happening now because this country had to slow down, stop a moment, and look itself in the eye, in the mirror, so that finally we can address this scourge that is racism in America and deal with it. And I agree with her 100%. It's time to deal with the racism that has been part of this country's history from the very first moments of our founding documents. I will say this as well. I have been hearing people ask the simple question, almost childlike, why does this country treat us this way? Why do they hate us the way that they do? And I'm here to tell you that what we're seeing isn't even about us, people of color. What we're seeing is not just anger and fear, but what it's truly hiding. And what it's truly hiding is fear. That's what we're dealing with. There are white people in this country with power who are terrified of losing the power that they've had over this world. Why? Take a look around you. People who don't look like them, who don't speak like them, who grew up in different neighborhoods are taking their own power, raising their own voices, and having a positive impact on the world. And they are terrified. Now, why would that make someone afraid? Here's the key. Because someone who understands our connection to one another, that we all are in this together as our country promises, they would not be afraid of that. They would understand that if you do well, then I do well. But that's not their mindset. And the reason why it's not is because inherently they understand how they came to power in the first place. Martin Luther King, towards the end of his life, in the last few years, started to shift his focus of the civil rights struggle, not just from civil rights, but also economic rights and the economic impact of the struggle. He started to call out the irony that the same people who would look to people of color and say, pull yourself up by the bootstraps, were the same ones who went out and took land for free that their own government gave them. Land that didn't belong to them, land that belonged to the Native Americans. They took that land and built their wealth and then turned around and pointed to everybody else and said, pull yourself up by the bootstraps. People in power who are terrified, they understand this. They understand the rape, the torture, the terror that they have inflicted upon other people, American citizens, to maintain their power. And in order to maintain that power, they will say to you that they cannot view themselves as the bad guy. They can't see themselves as the ones who did wrong. Because the moment they do, the moment they realize that they must give up their power. And so that's the frustration. Because when someone like George Floyd screams out for his life, screams out to be heard that he cannot breathe, the person with his knee on his neck will not hear him for just those reasons. I will tell you, as someone who taught history, that the impact of slavery, the damage that slavery has inflicted, has not only impacted people of color, but it's impacted white people as well. And that is what we have to deal with. And if you don't believe me, then ask yourself this question. What does it take to put your knee on someone's neck, hear the screams of the people around you, begging you to get off him, hearing from the man himself squirming under you as the life ebbs out of him? What kind of mindset do you have to keep your knee on his neck? Even after he stops breathing, even after he stops moving and stops pleading for his life, to put your hands in your pocket and keep your knee on his neck. You have to be damaged to do that. People have been asking me, how do we move forward? Where do we go from here? As someone who taught history, I can tell you that we need look no further than our own history, our own past, to find the answer. Ida B. Wells in the 1890s, and for those of you who have never heard of Ida B. Wells, don't be afraid, don't be ashamed, because Ida B. Wells is never taught in our schools. She's not talked about or taught in our U.S. history classes. And yet she was the protege of Frederick Douglass in the late 1800s, who wrote a book called Southern Horrors, in which she described the lynchings taking place across the American South in the 1800s. Very similar to what we see today with Ahmaud Arbery, with Breonna Taylor, with Amadou Diallo in New York, with James Byrd in Texas. And she said something profound. Back in the 1890s, she said, the demonstrated impact on the white man's wallet is much more effective than appeals to his consciousness. In the 1890s, this is 60 years before the civil rights struggle of the 1950s. She called for an economic boycott. She called for boycotts of the public transportation system. The NAACP itself in 1909 understood the lesson that in order for the NAACP to survive, they had to have white support. And that is true even today. To my white brothers and sisters in America and across the world, I tell you, raise your voice. If you're tired, speak out. If you see injustice, speak on it. When you hear people at your dinner table talking about people of color or other people and dogging them out and talking down about them, speak out. Let them know that you will not hear that anymore. That you're tired of it. That you will no longer be part of that history. There are people today whose family members are members of the KKK, but who themselves do not want any part of that because they understand our inherent connection to one another. That the only way past this is to love one another. People have been talking about the violence in the streets and whether or not that should be happening. And I say to you that from a historical perspective, we shouldn't be doing it. We should not be tearing up our own neighborhoods. Why? Because just like U.S. history books, when we do that, they will not tell the story of George Floyd. What they'll do is they'll tell the story of people destroying property in the streets. So don't even give them that. Just on a strategic level, don't give them that. But I tell you again, for all those who are talking badly about these people, how can you ever say that you do not understand their frustration, their anger? Because it's understandable. I feel it. We all do. Those who are not afraid of losing power. But I say to you that the only way we get through this is to come together. White, black, brown, yellow, whatever color. That is the promise of America. That is the promise of the founding documents of this great country. That we are all citizens. That we all have the right to freedom and justice in this country. It's time. It's time to slow down. It's time to deal with this. Look it in the eye for what it is and say enough is enough. We are moving forward, not backwards. We will not go back to the way things used to be. Broadcast your inner champion. It's time.